It's not uncommon for games nowadays to have a revival of sorts with an attempt to revitalise their player base. It was a common saying in MMOs that the first month after an MMO's launch was the most pivotal, as it was its one shot of retaining a large player base and making it a successful game. Some MMOs prove this to be true, like Rift, Star Wars The Old Republic or Age of Conan, where they had very successful sales figures originally, but the player base dropping off very quickly after the first month. There's not one reason for why this occurs, but many really. It could be like Star Wars The Old Republic, which had a really strong leveling aspect to the game, with great quests and a great story, but there's no endgame to it. Or it could be like Age of Conan, where the game is just really terrible, and people go back to MMOs where they're more familiar with, like World of Warcraft or EverQuest Online. MMOs are the largest games in the industry, and making new content to keep the player base busy can be very expensive. They're costly games to maintain them and tend to have massive development teams. So what tends to happen to the three games that I mentioned earlier is that they quickly fall behind the market. MMOs in that time period of 5 to 10 years ago had the $15 subscription fee a month for the majority of the time. And with the player bases falling off, the dev teams found it hard to recuperate the funds needed to bring the game forward with expansions and healthy updates, because people just weren't paying the $15 a month. Just look at gameplay now from Star Wars The Old Republic. In a game that's meant to be a live game with constant updates bringing it forward mechanically and visually, the game looks very, very old. And compare this to other MMOs from that time period, like Final Fantasy XIV, they look worlds apart to me in quality. As one has had the funds to bring the game forward, and the other, well, he's just not done well and clearly hasn't. So what's the point of this video? In my opinion, the old saying of the first month after an online game's launch is the most pivotal doesn't ring true to me anymore. Instead, I feel a game has to maintain a constant supply of content and game fixes to make it a more general, better experience, and that will naturally draw more players into the game through word of mouth. Ditching subscription fees and adopting the free-to-play or buy-to-play models, which are much more common now in MMOs and online games, to make it a less original cost to buy into the game or try into the game out or return into the game if you're an old player, is obviously going to encourage people to play it, because if you're a returning player you don't have to pay an extra $15 for a game that you had a reason to leave, and you can just hop in any time and you can see the improvements they've made if it doesn't have one. Or if it's a buy-to-play one and it's on sale and things like that, there's a lot more things going around that lead you to buying the game much more than having a game within a first month subscription fee. The first game I can think of proving this to be true is Lord of the Rings Online. When that game launched, it was not in a good place at all. The player base dropped off big time with poor endgame content and really not looking like there was a lot coming down the pipeline to add to the game. People were leaving the game and the game was not in a good position. So what did the guys at Turbine do? They spent a lot of time fixing the game, streamlining the experience and adding quality endgame content. Then once this was done, they made the game free to play with a fairly fair free to play model where you can play a certain area, then if you want to go to the next one you can pay a one-time fee to go into the next area, and then you've got both of them in your game. It was a much fairer system, so they got a lot of returning players to try out those original zones and the start big areas for the new players, and then people played that areas, liked it, the new changes to combat made it a much more enjoyable experience, and then they stuck around for a long time and led to the game having a very successful 10-year lifespan until 2017 when they changed their development studio. There's a lot more other recent MMOs that have done a very similar thing and turned their fortunes around, like Final Fantasy XIV, The Elder Scrolls Online, and you can maybe even bring up DC Universe Online into that mix as well. And with the popularity of the genre of MMOs waning, it's not just the MMO genre where second chances seem to occur for games. Games like Rainbow Six Siege had a tough launch of maintaining a player base, but they kept working on the game, making it better and better, leading it to be a really strong competitive first-person shooter, and now the game frequents in the top 5 most played games on Steam with the highest concurrent count. However, there's no better game to bring up for second chances than Fortnite. The sensation in the gaming industry at the minute is definitely the Battleground mode. And Fortnite, when the game launched, was a very meta experience. No one was really talking about the game. I don't think it really sold that well originally, but they brought a Battlegrounds mode which was free to play, so people could just go in and play the Battlegrounds mode, and kept the fundamental aspects of what the Battlegrounds mode was like in very other successful games, like PUBG for instance, but gave it an alternative art style in comparison to PUBG, and big variations to that Battlegrounds mode that make it a different experience, and some of these are like crafting for instance. And now Fortnite is reporting player base figures that are larger concurrent players than the PUBG Steam records, which has got the records for Steam, which make it one of the most played games, if not the most played game in the world. Not all games that are given a second chance are success stories. Turtle Rock Studios' Evolve had a lot of people returning to the game when they announced it was going to a free-to-play model. And while people gave the game a go and stayed for about a week or 2 weeks, it didn't last long, and the player base quickly went down again, even though they made slight improvements to the game, but it wasn't enough, and sadly the game has since been shut down. I do think it's clear to suggest that gamers in 2018 are happy to return to video games that may have been disappointing at launch. Other examples could be The Division. People want to do this because people are really excited for a lot of video game products that come down the pipeline, and these large-scale products like Destiny and so on that are the more recent trend that people can play and last and keep playing them for a long time. And if they are disappointed and not the product that they want it to be, there's a chance that they can go to that. If game studios, and there's a chance that it can become that product it wants to be. If game studios keep working on their product and making it and listening to community feedback, they can make it into a really bright game, and the examples that I brought up earlier in this video have definitely proved that to be the case. I think the idea of second chances in games not just having that one shot is definitely going to have a larger impact on the industry than it will first appear. For instance, one of the examples that I can bring up is like reviews from major outlets, so like IGN, GameSpot, Reviews, Giant Bomb, and for instance, them reviews can become irrelevant after a year or so because they could become outdated and they're not really representing what the game's about. And it's because the game can change exactly what they're writing about in that review, what they don't like about the game in that review, and make it a completely different experience. So what is sites like IGN and that going to do? Are they going to have to return to games every year, or is they just going to keep that review standing? I mean, it's not really a good idea for consumers to base themselves off this review and look for purchases. Instead, they're going to have to go to much more relevant footage and look to more recent content creators and stuff like that. All in all, though, I think it's in general a very good thing that games get more than one bite of the cherry. The video game industry is a very expensive industry to be a part of, especially on the AAA front. So having a forgiving player base means that game companies shouldn't just give up shortly after launch, and instead keep working on it to make it a solid product and put a lot more finances into the game, listen to community feedback like I said, and make it an overall impressionable and well-placed product. So thanks a lot for watching the Monday video for general gaming stuff. A little bit of a different take than what I did last week. I did a ranking series of the Assassin's Creed series, so if you want to go check that out, there'll be a little end card at the end of this video. But thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate you checking on this video and checking it out. I'll be back Wednesday for the Elder Scrolls or Bethesda style video, and then I've got the games that I'll be talking about, what I've been playing this week on Friday. And I'm looking forward to coming back on Wednesday with the next Bethesda video. Let me know what you think about games having second chances. Is there a game that you played now that you was disappointed at with launch? Is there a game that maybe you played now and gave a second chance to return to and it didn't work out? Let me know, because I know there's a couple of those for me that I played originally, didn't really enjoy, and then came back later and then really enjoyed it again. It seems to be a big trend with MMOs originally, but now it's really branched across the general industry, and I just wanted to make a video on this trend because it was a topic that I'm really fascinated by when games get another chance. So thanks a lot for watching. I really hope you liked the video. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys later.